Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock as this is being posted so that we can have time to let this psalm move us into the events of the middle of this day, the middle of the week, special week, the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We've been following the Psalms numerically, and we're up now to Psalm 55, a powerful psalm. And who can read this psalm but to be aware of the events in our nation's capital and around the country? So what this psalm does, as we enter into it meditatively, is to lift us above and back thousands of years to the first writer of this psalm, embodying the way in which David experienced the attack of his enemies. But let's begin first with some silence, with some gentle audio background that hopefully will center us into the silence of this morning. So relax, my brothers and sisters. Loosen all the muscles in your body. Let the skeleton of your body do all the supporting, and not your muscles or your emotions. Just the stillness, the quiet, the gentle sounds, if they can be picked up, of the fireplace as the spirit clings to the soul as the fire clings to the wood. So we take now some quiet moments just to become still and to let the experience of silence define us and ground us. As we begin, as I usually do with the fire starter, I'd like to present to you the fire starter from the original version that was written somewhere between 1996 and 1998 before the children's version. And I hope you find this helpful for you as we enter into this time. It's entitled Absolute Confidence in God. Do you ever feel like wanting to run away from it all? You're in good company. So does David in today's psalm. He wishes he could just fly away like a dove to a wilderness somewhere. What makes things even worse for him is that his own friends are betraying him. David expresses his anger fully, even imagining the destruction of his enemies. However, as though moved by how dangerous his thoughts are, David reaches out even more dangerously into pure trust and confidence in the Lord. As a seesaw, tilting from one person, shifting, and the other suddenly bouncing high, so awareness of the power of God lifts David to the heights. The goodness and faithfulness of the Lord is greater than any wickedness. Pause at morning, noon, and night, and at other times of transition in the day. Immediately cast your burdens before the Lord, lest they overwhelm you. I'm going to read the psalm now from the New Revised Standard Version, and I invite you to have your Bible with you. Your translation might not be the same, but you'll catch similarities. Maybe you have a favorite translation pardon me, that you want to stay with. So I'm going to read it slowly, making some comments as we move along in this psalm. Give ear to my prayer, O God. Do not hide yourself from my supplication. Attend to me and answer me. I am troubled in my complaint. Do not hide yourself. In that first verse is, don't let your silence be that you're not attending to me. Listen to me, even though your response may be the silence itself. What a good way to see silence. When we become centered enough, the silence itself may be what you need. It may not be an articulated answer to your problem, but your silence in faith lets you know that God is listening. From verse 3, I'm distraught by the noise of the enemy because of the clamor of the wicked, for they bring trouble upon me, and in anger they cherish enmity against me. Interesting juxtaposition of words. Cherishing, enmity. Usually we think of cherishing as something endearing. Here it's used for those that are plotting and planning wickedness. Verse 4, my heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. Truly, I would flee far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find shelter for myself from the raging wind and tempest. We can do that. In our imagination, sisters and brothers, we can fly away and let kind of a 30,000 feet looking down from above at our circumstances, our nation, our world. Go higher even till you see the globe, this globe which many have characterized to be like a global village. And find rest there. Imagining that we're far away from our troubles is not to necessarily be deceived by their reality. It's just to allow another reality to give a perspective. And that's what this and all the Psalms do. They give the perspective of God, which we can fly away like a dove to get God's perspective. In verse 9, confuse, O Lord, confound their speech, for I see violence and strife in the city. We think of the Tower of Babel, where God confused the languages of the world so that people did not understand. Looking back upon the insurrection, was there not confusion in all the words? Was there not something, maybe even a divine intervention, that their intense attacks, aided by heroic persons, to deflect away, and by maybe a minute or so, our major leaders were able to get away. They could fly away, as it were, and be safe as best they could be. Day and night they go around it on its walls, and iniquity, trouble are within it. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. Verse 12. It is not my enemies who taunt me. I could bear that. But it is you, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend, with whom I kept pleasant company. We walked in the house of God with the throng. Let death come upon them. Let them go down alive to Sheol, for evil is in their homes and in their hearts. Now, lest that thought, pausing for a moment, be too overwhelming as that destructive wish, and in other psalms there's even the wish that their babies would be dashed against the rocks. Even that is something that enters his thoughts but does not enter his heart. I pause to light the fire again. Maybe there's an image when the fire goes out. Sometimes darkness just overwhelms us and we can't see the light, but the light is there. So as we continue this psalmic meditation, we continue with Psalm 55. And the shift from the devastating wishes about death coming upon them from verse 15 shifts to verse 16. But I call upon God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning at noon I utter my complaint and moan, and he will hear my voice. Sometimes we just have to hit bottom in our thoughts, in our desperation, and our hopelessness at times. That's what births real hope. It's not just a vain wishing upon a star. It's the experience of hope, even when all seems hopeless. Interesting. I utter my complaint in evening and morning and at noon. For some centuries, there's a devotion that Gina and I participate in called the Angelus, at 6 in the morning, at noon, and 6 in the evening. Just look up the word Angelus, Angelus, in Wikipedia. You'll find something of that history and its familiar traditional way of praying it that other denominations, other than the original Catholic one, have adopted it. Whether you stop then or at other times in the day, check out the time. Pause and let yourself be refreshed. In verse 18, he will redeem me unharmed from the battle that I wage, for many are arrayed against me. God, who is enthroned from of old, will hear and will humble them, because they do not change and do not fear God. You remember the Magnificat, which we celebrated in the Advent season, when Mary said that he brings down the proud from their throne and raises up the lowly, who are near the ground because they're humble. That's what the word means, humus, the moist earth. Remembering that we are from this earth, mysterious, wonderful, remarkable way in which we find ourselves alive, because God thought it would be a good idea. Verse 20, my companion laid hands on a friend and violated a covenant with me, with speech smoother than butter, but with a heart set on war, with words that were softer than oil, but in fact were drawn swords. We identify with our country right now. And maybe there are things in your life that whatever you've experienced that might be a kind of betrayal, small or big, just turn it over and let God bring the healing to yourself, which will then emanate healing to those that are troubled that are lying, that are deceived. It might not happen, but it will happen the quicker and the sooner if you love and let go. Verse 22, cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. That word cast down is the word that is used when a camel who was loaded with a burden just drops to its knees and tilts to one side and drops the burden. I'll never forget my first sermon in Grace United Methodist Church in 2008. But I thought I would demonstrate this. So I dropped to my knees and I tilted to one side and I banged my head on the altar rail. And the chairman of trustees went, what do we do? Do we call 911? I was okay. It was just a bump. But it's humorous to say. So when you find yourself having a really tough time with your thoughts or with what's going on in your life, or being in intercession for our country, drop to your knees and maybe just tilt to one side till you're lying on your side. Your burden cast upon the Lord. And the final verse, but you, O Lord, will cast them down into the lowest pit. The bloodthirsty and treacherous shall not live out half their days. There it is again, one of those dark thoughts. But it ends in this final phrase and sentence, but I will trust in you. So that's what we need to do, isn't it? Pray a psalm like this and bring fully to the surface even your darkest thoughts. Let them be put into the light of the Spirit. There's two persons that have been a beautiful expression. Charles Stanley, who for decades and decades has been an inspired writer. And on this psalm, he says, when the walls close in and the floor gives way, we often wish we could be anywhere but where God has put us. Trusting God, however, means looking beyond what we can see to what God sees. So when you in your imagination want to get away from it all, do it in your imagination. Be distant from it in your thoughts, because it might place you into the context of what God sees. For him, 1,000 years are as a day, and as a day is as 1,000 years. So this special day, we pray that it will illumine the future that lies before us. And then Max Lucado, commenting in the thoughts around this psalm, he says, watch God accomplish changes in areas you have not been able to change. And it's like the Serenity Prayer, the prayer that countless numbers of support groups close. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God bless you. As we bear witness in a few hours to the inauguration, we just pray that the one God will inaugurate a new future for each of us and collectively as a country. God bless you.